Imagine someone comes up to you with an idea for a new Souls-like, and then they describe it like this. You'd think they were mad. How could all of this be possible? The scale of Elden Ring, the originality of WUCHANG, the progression routes of Dark Souls, and horrific monstrosities of Bloodborne, also the fantastic whimsy of Nioh, the deep lore, branching paths, and epic boss battles that only a true Soulsborne game can deliver. Well, my friends, I have just described WUCHANG Fallen Feathers to you. This game is a Souls fanatic's wet dream. Oh, and you can throw in Mimics, Secrets, Transmogs, Sen's Fortress, and a bunch of other unique and new awesome mechanics for good measure too. WUCHANG really has it all. Yes, it does also have its flaws, which we'll talk about shortly, but after around 100 hours in the game so far, with my first playthrough taking 44 of them hours, let me now give you my full and honest review of WUCHANG. Oh, last bit of swooning before we start. You can even respec everything whenever you like, so you'll never have FOMO again when you find a new weapon. So before I get into more of the general gameplay and combat elements, I'll start by digging deeper into the mechanics that make WUCHANG a good Souls-like specifically. Because if you are considering picking up this game, it's probably because you love Bloodborne and Elden Ring, or Lies of P or Wukong, so can WUCHANG hold up to them? Does it have what it takes to compete with the best Souls-likes? And I will just say that everything I've included on this list is because WUCHANG does it very well. There is a separate section for things I don't really like about WUCHANG, which we'll cover later, but all of the following mechanics are fantastically implemented. So firstly, you have many traps in this game. They come in the form of big swinging pendulum spike traps, floor traps, giant boulders coming at you, poison, exploding barrels, mines buried in the snow. It's a little bit aggravating in your first playthrough before you know where all of the trap placements are, but that's one of the things that makes it a Souls-like. It's not supposed to be easy. It's not supposed to be a walk in the park. You are going to die a lot, and I think you'll probably have fun doing so. There are many branching paths in this game and many optional bosses. So something that hopefully a lot of people will be very happy to hear is that if you are bashing your head against a boss that you can't get past, just head the other way and you'll probably find there's a different route you can take that you completely missed that brings you out into an entirely new optional area. Yes, there are huge chunks of this game that are mostly optional that you can completely miss, and the fact that the developers were confident enough to implement that into the game is a very, very good sign for me. And as I mentioned at the start of the video, Dark Souls 1 does this very well, where you will unlock shortcuts back to much earlier areas in the game, and you open the door and you're like, oh my god, I'm back here, what? There are many moments like that in WUCHANG, love it. The boss fights, there are absolutely gigantic monstrosities, there are more nimble ninjas and bandits and commanders, like the range of bosses in this game, and I think that means there's going to be something for everyone in WUCHANG. At least a few of the enemies and bosses, you are going to adore the design so much that even as they are pummeling you to death, you're not going to mind because it's just going to be so cool to experience. Another thing that I've got to give a huge shout out to them for is the fact that armor sets really truly matter. So for instance, in Elden Ring, hate to shit on one of my favorite games, one massively weighty armor set isn't that different to another massively weighty armor set. If you have two high weight armor sets that give you lots and lots of resistances, it's not really going to matter which of the two you bring into a boss, as long as it isn't negatively affecting your equip load. That is the complete opposite of how armor works in WUCHANG. You will probably find that each time you encounter a new particularly tough enemy, like an elite enemy, and especially with most bosses, you will enter into the fight. You will be identifying, right, do they use mostly slashing attacks? Do they use mostly blunt attacks? Are they casting magic? If so, am I seeing flames coming out? Am I seeing lightning coming out? You will then go back into your inventory. You will see the armor set that protects you against that particular thing, and you will go back in the next time and find you have a significantly easier time with the boss because the armor stats matter so much in this game. And if that's worrying you, like, oh, but I might be having to mix and match pieces and I'll be looking really crap because Fashion Souls is the most important thing in the world, well, you can transmog whenever you want for free from the very start of the game. So you can always look your absolute best whilst making sure you are wearing the most efficient armor as well. And don't worry, you don't have to do this so often that menuing becomes a chore. You are still menuing significantly less than something like Neo. It's very reasonable, in my opinion. Next up, something that I hate, but is fantastic that it's in the game because it is at the heart of a Souls-like, is the amount of ambushes and just evil, evil enemy placements. You'll have an archer with flaming explosive arrows perched atop a tower that you cannot get to for this entire area, and you have to run around the whole camp avoiding his constant barrage of arrows. And it's like, am I confident enough that I can keep my eye on him and dodge his arrows every single time he looses one at me, that I can still explore the area as well? Or am I going to need to run through to the next area, find a way up onto his tower, take him out, then come back and explore once I've dealt with him? And situations like that, choices like that, come up quite often in WUCHANG. It's frustrating, but it's great at what it does. Also, as I said, there are multiple types of mimics in this game. You'll be smashing through some jars trying to find some hidden loot, and suddenly one of the jars will come to life as this weird giant frog lady that starts whipping your legs with her tongue. And again, you'll try and interact with a shrine so you can rest up, and suddenly the shrine will come to life and start beating the shit out of you. They are just two of the things that will happen to you in this game. And the last couple of things I wanted to talk about in this section before we move on to the negatives are the fact that certain bosses will become regular enemies later on in the game. Personally, it's a small thing, but I just love it when games do that. Also, there are multiple camera options. So, you know, we all say that gravity and the camera are the true final bosses in Souls-likes. Not so much in WUCHANG, because there is a very generous FOV slider. I don't know if that's on console as well or just on PC. I hope it's on both, but there is a very generous FOV slider on PC, along with two different camera perspectives called Classic and Standoff. One that will center the action around your character and the camera will rotate around you, and one that will center the camera on the enemy you are locked onto. So depending on the size of boss you are fighting, these two different perspectives, Classic and Standoff, are going to help you have an easier time seeing the whole arena. And then finally, as I already alluded to in the intro, you can respec for free at will, so you can try out all the weapons, all the builds, all the stats. It's absolutely fantastic. It's so generous. And I will give weapons their own section, because even though there are only 5 weapon types, every weapon within that type feels like its own category. So really, there's more like 20 weapon types, because each of the axes are so unique, each of the longswords are so unique, etc, etc. Now that I'm done with that spiel, let's talk about some of the negatives before I then give you a bunch of the new mechanics that WUCHANG implements that are unique to WUCHANG and give it its own identity and breathe a breath of fresh life into the Souls-like genre. So, as for the negatives, there aren't too many, at least not in my opinion. There's probably a few things that I consider positives that you might consider a negative. After all, this is purely opinion-based. In my opinion, there aren't enough item slots in the game. There are 3 items that you are pretty much required to have on your hotbar at all times. Your main healing flasks, obviously. An item called Temperance, which will allow you to ignite your weapon by using the acupuncture needles in your arm, infusing it with certain status effects and elemental effects. Again, these 2 items are absolutely required on your hotbar, along with these avian feathers that you will be collecting quite a few of, which will randomly boost either your attack, your health, or your stamina. And then, if you are someone who likes to use NPC summons in your games, your 4th slot will need to be occupied by the Bone Whistle to summon the NPC to help you. And you can't summon the NPC before the boss fight, so you will need this on your item bar when you are already in the fight, and it's very, very, very hard to change items once you've already engaged in a fight. So already that's 3, potentially even all 4 of your item slots already used up, because you can only have 4. And there are so many items in this game that the game wants you to use. many different healing items, many different buffing items, but you are forced to stick to the same 3 or 4 so frequently that all of your other items end up falling by the wayside. Another thing that I don't like is that for me, there isn't enough emphasis on the elemental effects in the game. There is absolutely no weapons, to my knowledge, that have inherent fire, cold, or lightning damage. And the same goes with feathering damage. I'll talk about feathering later. It's just a form of magic. In fact, I'm pretty sure there is only one weapon in the game that has any kind of damage associated with it that isn't physical. That's one particular one-handed sword, which also does a small amount of magic damage. Now, you can use this acupuncture, this tempering function, to apply statuses to your weapons, but they only apply for a set period of time. So for the majority of the time, because you want to save these tempering charges because they are limited, every single weapon is just doing raw physical damage. And I feel like for such a supernatural, fantastical, mythological game with lots of different awesome spells and elements and statuses, I'd like if we were able to use them a bit more frequently than we seem to be able to. Another thing that I find quite irritating is how spammy certain enemies can be. Now, don't get me wrong, everything is still beatable. I have beaten the game twice so far in my 100 hours played, but with certain encounters, you really, really have to know your shit. Because if you get caught off guard just once and you get knocked down, it is so hard to get up again. You do have immunity as you are getting up, but if the enemy is already in the middle of another attack, their attack's gonna hit you before you can roll away or attack them, and it is easy to get stun locked to death. This may change. This may be patched. I'm hoping this is just a press release issue and that they may tweak how ridiculously aggressive enemies are at stun locking you. And finally, the only other negative, a similar vein, there are certain shortcut elevators you can unlock where ranged enemies can then just shoot you off the elevator. And they're tight elevators, they're small elevators. So you can't roll around to dodge these projectiles because you will just roll off the elevator. I can't show you any of the footage because they're primarily in Chapter 5, and we're not allowed to show anything from Chapter 5 or beyond in our review. But just know it's there and it's bloody annoying. Now, they're the main negatives. The fact that I have got 100 hours in this game, dozens and dozens of positive things to say, and only 4 negatives, I'd say it's pretty damn good. So let me now talk about some of the mechanics unique to WUCHANG that make this such a worthwhile game to play, rather than just replaying your current favorite Souls-like for the 100th time. So the first unique mechanic I'm going to share with you is your inner demon. This is tied to your madness gauge, and you increase your madness gauge and become more mad every time you kill a human enemy, and you decrease it and become more sane every time you kill a feathered enemy. So feathered enemies are human, or were once human, but have now been infected by the feathering plague and are slowly turning more and more monstrous by the day. And if you want to know all about the feathering and feathered enemies, make sure you subscribe and stay tuned for my next video coming out in just a few hours, The Things You Didn't Know About WUCHANG, where I will spoiler-free cover many things about the feathered and the feathering plague for you, so that you know what you're getting into if you do decide to jump into the game tomorrow. But anyway, back to this inner demon mechanic. So that's how you increase it and decrease it. You also will increase your madness by quite a big chunk every time you die, and you can decrease it by using a certain item and basically praying and cleansing your soul. So what happens? Why does this matter if you become more or less mad? If your madness maxes out at 100%, you will deal significantly increased damage, but you will also take significantly increased damage. So letting it build up is a very high risk, high reward system. And there is also a bunch of skills you can unlock that will enhance your combat abilities the more mad you become. So spells become cheaper, you gain more of a resource called Skyborn Might, which we'll talk about in just a second. So there are many benefits to becoming more and more mad. However, if you die at 100% madness, your inner demon will manifest. And when you go back and try to collect your souls, or your red mercury as they are called in WUCHANG, your inner demon will spawn on your bloodstain and will now be guarding your currency. And you will need to defeat your inner demon to regain your souls and to regain your sanity. But the main reason I love the inner demon mechanic I haven't even mentioned yet. Your inner demon is hostile to every single thing in the area. So there are certain items in the game you can consume to willingly pump up your madness gauge. And what you can do is you can use this to your advantage, and you can become fully mad, run into an area that is far too tough for you to tackle on your own, deliberately die. Then when you come back to that location, spawn your inner demon by getting close enough to your bloodstain, and now back off and watch your inner demon kill everything in the area for you. And what's going to happen is either all the enemies will be dead and your inner demon will be weakened enough that you can just go and kill her, or the enemies will kill your inner demon for you and they will now be significantly weakened. It's a fantastic mechanic to be able to use and abuse in this way. Really fun, really unique. I just love it. Next up, I also mentioned tempering. So one of the attributes you can unlock are acupuncture needles to put in your feathered arm. WUCHANG is undergoing the feathering, she is turning into a monster, but you are able to control it through certain means. And you can find acupuncture needles that grant you certain buffs, and then you can unlock more and more acupuncture slots via the skill tree. So for instance, you might want to buff your fire damage and your strength. So it's kind of like the mixed physic in Elden Ring, though 10 times stronger. When you use one of these tempering items to buff your weapon, and by the end game, you can literally triple your damage. It is absolutely crazy. Really fun mechanic. And it just makes you feel so awesome, honestly. Another unique mechanic I said I was going to talk about is Skyborn Might. I mentioned this briefly earlier. This is absolutely key to combat. This is absolutely crucial. So there is an element of deflecting and blocking and even clashing in this game, but usually they are either weapon dependent or skill dependent. However, dodging, that's going to be your main defensive action. And every time you perfect dodge, you will build a charge of Skyborn Might. And you will then spend your charges of Skyborn Might to do your really powerful attacks, to do things called Swift Draw, and to also cast your spells, things like that. And as I say, initially, Skyborn Might is only built up through perfect dodges, but very quickly through the skill tree, you will unlock loads and loads of ways to rack up lots and lots of Skyborn Might. So you are spamming your special abilities left, right, and center. Makes you feel like an absolute god. So definitely, if you're only going to go into the game remembering one of these unique mechanics, Skyborn Might, that is perhaps the single most important thing to remember to keep building up in this game. It's going to allow you to pummel your enemies with so much damage and turn the tide of any situation. And I don't want to give everything away, so the only other unique mechanic I'll talk about is Benediction. This one, you are hugely rewarded for exploration. As long as you are exploring the whole game, you will find many of these Benediction stones that you can then slot into your weapon. And there are certain set bonuses if you have all 3 matching stones from a set, so they will not only grant their own individual buffs, there is an overarching, even bigger buff that they will now grant you for using the full set. Very cool. You can mix and match so many different ones for lots of really weird and wonderful combinations. And in fact, I already have a build guide / boss guide in mind to help you with a mid-game skill check. This boss, she's an absolute machine. I think a lot of people are probably going to get stuck there. So I've got a really good build guide in mind that utilizes these Benediction stones to just absolutely melt her face. So now that you know lots of what is in WUCHANG, let me actually talk about how enjoyable it is to play. Why should you get it? Why should you not get it? So now that you know quite a lot about the features that the game has to offer, there's a few more things you need to know before we go. Namely, firstly, how difficult the game is compared to other Souls-likes, also how good and how fun the combat is, and most importantly, how meaningful NPCs and their quest lines are. This last one is huge. I'm going to save it for the end of the video because, as I say, the game has 4 very different endings, and the NPCs, the story, and their quest lines tie in so much to this last point. So let me just quickly cover off the combat and the difficulty before we then come back to that. Firstly, how difficult is WUCHANG compared to other Souls-likes? It's pretty damn tough. As I say, there's a few skill checks that might put quite a few people off. But trust me, stick with it. There's a weird learning curve to the game where it starts off pretty easy and doesn't really force you to learn the mechanics that well. And then you'll get stuck about maybe 10, 15 hours in. And I can almost guarantee 99% of people will get stuck on the same boss. In fact, I'll put up footage of it. It's this person here. And I will help you get through that. And after that, the game then eases off and gets a lot easier again for a while. And by the time you get to the next roadblock, you will be so much better at the game that you should find the rest of the game very challenging, but not absolutely ridiculous. So, sorry, to answer the question more directly, it's tough. It's one of the harder Souls-likes. We're not talking the difficulty level of like the Nioh 3 demo or Sekiro, but it's harder than most of them. And considering there is no co-op, there is no one to help you, and there is only NPC help for certain bosses, the ones where you don't have help, yeah, they're gonna be tough. They're gonna be tough, but you can do it. You can do it, and when you do stick with it and you get really good, it becomes incredibly addictive, honestly, because of the variety of builds and the variety of weapons. And on that note, how fun is the combat? Insanely fun. It's really, really cool. I do wish spells were a little bit more viable. All of the spells that do good damage take so long to cast that any boss is just going to appear in front of you and knock you the hell out of the animation, which kind of wipes out one-handed swords from being all that viable, because one-handed swords are the spell casting weapon. So whenever you want to cast a spell, you want to bring out your one-handed sword because it will basically double the damage of your spell, and that's about all they're good for. So it kind of wipes out that category. Spells, a little bit lackluster because they are just so slow, but the rest of it, oh my god. Each weapon has multiple unique abilities, and each weapon category has a bunch of unique abilities as well. And you can wield 2 weapons at the same time. Not at the same time, sorry, but you can have 2, and you can switch between them at will. So you can mix and match certain abilities from different skill trees, and it's really fun when you get used to flip-flopping between 2 different weapon categories. There is even a mechanic called Swift Draw, which I have only just this second remembered to tell you about. It will use one of your Skyborn Might, which I mentioned earlier, that resource that you build up in a bunch of different ways, to instantly switch to your offhand weapon and do an awesome attack animation when you're doing that switch. And again, your madness can make that even more powerful. Really fun. And then, as I say, there are just so many different movesets for your weapons, so many different skills, and each weapon within the same category also has a bunch of different skills and works completely different from the other. So you'll have one spear that doubles as a machine gun, and you'll have another that doubles as like a steam-powered whip. Like, it's so cool. The variety of weapons in this game, considering there are only 5 weapon categories, it does not feel like that. It's awesome, honestly. And finally, I said I was going to talk about NPCs, quest lines, and the overarching story. This is absolutely huge. People who love FromSoftware's way of telling stories are going to adore WUCHANG. There are many, I'm obviously not going to give you any specific examples, I'm not going to give you any spoilers, but there are many situations similar to Bloodborne where you might speak to someone behind their door, and you will have a somewhat important conversation with them, and you might not think it's going anywhere, But really, that was very integral to the story, and you want to pay attention to every single line that every single NPC says, and you want to go and do all the things they're talking about, or you will very easily miss out on huge chunks of the game and inadvertently lock yourself out of 3 of the 4 endings, so the choice is made for you. For instance, there's one part of the game where you will unlock the ability to go to 2 main areas at the same time. You want to very carefully listen to what all the NPCs are saying back at your hub, and you want to make sure you go to the correct area first, because if you go to the other one first and then you come back and do the other area that they said you should go to, then all of the quest lines that related to that area, no, you've missed them. All them NPCs, they've just gone on with their lives, and you have absolutely completely missed them. The game is that brutal and unforgiving when it comes to quest lines and the different endings to the game, which I know some gamers won't like the sound of. My wife detests games like this. She's like, why can they not just tell me exactly what to do and where to go? I don't want to have to figure it out myself and make the wrong choice. And I get that. And that's exactly why I'm here. That's why I will do these guides for you. So yeah, there's lots of resources out there to help you not miss anything. I absolutely love this style of storytelling. It's very Elden Ring, it's very Dark Souls, it's very Bloodborne. Honestly, the quest lines are so reminiscent for me of Bloodborne, and I'm hoping most people are going to love this style of storytelling. I think it's done absolutely beautifully. And also, one thing I will say, if these last 2 minutes have scared you off the game a little bit, don't forget there are 4 different endings to the game. So if you feel like you have missed lots of stuff, don't worry, because you'll want to play through the game again anyway, because the gameplay is that fun, and it just gives you an opportunity to get one of the other endings. Now, I appreciate I have waffled on for quite some time in this review, and I could go on for longer, I really could, but I won't. Hopefully this is enough for you to make up your mind as to whether you should get the game or not. Personally, I absolutely think you should. It is an incredible Souls-like, it is an incredible action RPG. Everything it sets out to do, it does fantastically well. Oh, one last thing, cannot believe I nearly forgot to tell you this. There is no jump in this game, which again, it's not a good or a bad thing. It's just a thing that you should know. There's just no jump. If anything, it's probably a good thing because it means there's less verticality, so there's potentially less things for you to accidentally miss. But yeah, just thought you should know. Anyway, my friends, that is it from me. Make sure you subscribe because I've got loads more WUCHANG content coming literally hours from now. Unless you're watching this in the future, in which case I've probably done it all already. So go watch it all anyway. And with that, my friends, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.